Hello everyone, and a very good morning or afternoon depending on where you're joining us from today. Thank you very much for coming along to this webinar introducing the Academic Success Skills for Learning, Skills for Life program. We should be taking about 45 minutes of your time today, including an opportunity for a designated question and answer session at the end. So firstly, just a couple of introductions. That's me, Sarah Vaughan, on the right-hand side. I work for Epigeum, and we're the organisation that puts together the online courses, and I also look after the webinars as part of this. A large part of my role is looking after our collaboration and implementation workshops, as well as our product launches and online events such as this. I'll let Katie on the left, without a picture, introduce herself first, and then Liz, if you could.
Hello everyone, my name is Katie Chad and I work as an assistant editor at Epigeum and I worked on the Academic Success project.
Hi, my name is Liz Dunne and I've worked in higher education for over 30 years now. I've always been focused on students and largely on student skill development and transition into university.
Great, thank you very much. So now just a quick look at the agenda before we get started. First we'll look a little bit at Epigeum itself. We're the organisation that puts together the programs through a collaborative model, which is quite unique. And I'll talk to you briefly about how that approach works. I will give you a bit of information about the company, our history, and also where we are now. Then Liz will speak to you about the background and vision she had as lead advisor for the Academic Success program. Following this, we will show you a demonstration of the Academic Success program so you can get a feel for the online courses and what they look like and also get an idea of the content as well. We will then wrap up with a question and answer session. So we were founded in 2005 as a spin-out originally from Imperial College London. Our two founders created the company in response to what they felt was a lack of timely support for researchers. One of our founders was doing a PhD at the time and he came across issues that he wanted and needed to be advised on. And it would either be that there would be a face-to-face course in 3 months' time that was being offered or that there was inadequate, dated or boring material that didn't quite fit what he needed. So he saw this as an opportunity to work with universities to create supported materials for researchers, particularly PhD students and postdocs like himself. And that's where we started, in this sort of research arena within higher education. And in the 10 years since, we have expanded to studying programs, courses for students, as well as teaching programs. We were acquired by Oxford University Press in May of this year. Oxford University Press are actually a division of Oxford University, so we're still within the not-for-profit organisation in a higher education context and still very much focused on creating high-quality learning materials. To date, in the decade since we have been formed, we have created over 78 online courses across 12 different programs, and we currently have 7 in development. We're an increasingly globally focused organisation and have worked with over 260 universities across 29 different countries worldwide to date. We've worked with many across Australia and Southeast Asia as well, and this is a map to show you what countries we have been involved with in the development of our courses. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how we develop our programs. So we have a development group of up to 20 universities come together and share their experience at a workshop to help us create a really great online course. We recruit authors all under the guidance of a lead advisor. In the case of this program we are discussing today, Elisabeth Dunne. The lead advisor is the person who has the expertise in the area who can lead and shape the vision for the program. We have a meticulous review process in place which allows the development group to look at the content of the courses, check that it matches their expectations and comment on it as well. Thus, the development group of universities are the early adopters who get to use the program and implement them at their universities. And then we make it available to other universities on a license basis, which is what we are now able to do with the completed program for academic success. So hopefully that's given you a bit of background to Epigeum and how we put the programs together. I'd also like to talk to you a little bit about how we implement the programs. There's 3 ways that you can implement them at your institutions. You can have them as standalone online courses that you make available to your students. You can offer them as tutor-supported online courses. But the most preferred option is to have them as part of a blended learning program. So you have some face-to-face interaction as well as standalone online access for the students. We have a dedicated implementation team within Epigeum who will help you implement these courses to best suit your institution's needs, and they are always available to provide you with the support you need. So please feel reassured that your courses will be implemented effectively at your institution. So hopefully that's given you a bit of information about us and what we do. I'd be happy to take any questions on the development process or implementation. But for now, I'll hand over to Elisabeth Dunne to talk to you about the foundations of the program and her vision for it.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to talk to you, as Sarah said, about the background to this course and the vision that we had for it as a collaborative group originally. What I'm going to talk about is very much set in the context of higher education in the UK. But the important thing to remember is that we have worked in developing the programme with people from around the world. I'm now just going to look at a few of the things which I realised that students have to face when they're moving from school to university. I'm thankful to the University of New South Wales for some of these ideas, to which I added from my own experience. And again, as I appreciate, some of your experiences will be different in the different countries that you come from, but there is nonetheless something that has to change quite dramatically when students enter university. So I'm not going to read all the detail on these, but if we just look at some of them, the differences between most universities and most schools. And here we're talking largely about 18-year-olds coming into university. So obviously you have very large sites, often in comparison to schools, more than one campus. You have colleges, residences. Now, a major difference between school and higher education is about attendance. Attendance is not taken in lectures. Absences are not followed up, and students are free to come and go as they please. Contact hours quite often could be low, and a lot of study happens outside classes. And this is an area which a lot of students struggle with, and attendance on some occasions is quite low. Obviously, parents are no longer in the UK allowed to talk to universities about student progress, so there can be much less parental influence. A major issue for many students is that students come to university from a huge range of backgrounds, which is extremely right and proper. There'll be, in the UK, many international students, and friendship groups suddenly have to be very different from the narrow group of schools. Time management is really a problem. Students have to manage their own time. Learning's completely different. Students are required to learn independently, and this is something a lot of universities struggle with, finding ways to encourage students to do this appropriately. Classes are taught in completely different ways, lectures, tutorials, seminars, approaches that students are not familiar with at all. Assessment is always a bugbear in higher education. Students complain about assessment often, I'm sure, in whatever country you come from, and of course it means a lot to them. But students are left to their own devices to interpret and understand for themselves. And also, school exams, at least in the UK, happen at regular intervals, and certainly final exams before leaving school at the end of a 2-year period. But sometimes degrees go on for 3 and up to 5 years if you've got work placements and so on. So it's a very different way of thinking about assessment. Feedback, again, is a problem for all students. It seems they never get enough feedback, but when you give them feedback, they don't read it. It's hard for students sometimes to interpret. And this whole idea that students have to improve themselves is really important. And the fact that teachers are no longer surrounding them, but access is fairly limited. And the curriculum, of course, is entirely different, and the main issue in this is that students are expected to recognise, possibly for the first time, that knowledge is contested and there are conflicted interpretations in their subject areas. And for many students, whatever their age, it's not just a transition to university, but a major transition, certainly for 18-year-olds, to emerging adulthood. But also, I think, for mature students and students in the workplace, it is something that is about developing identity, a new way of working, a new way of thinking about themselves. So if you're 18, there's separation from parents, but whatever age, there may be disruption of social ties and friendships. Again, for younger students, they may have been very bright in the context they come from, but suddenly there's lots of very bright students all around them. They're not top of the class anymore. This leads, in many cases, to lack of confidence. Students are just one of a huge crowd. There's so many unknowns for them. Independence, they don't really know what it means, many students. And aspirations. It's a time when these change, whatever age you are, wherever you've come to university, and you need to begin thinking about whether you're dreaming or whether you have realistic aspirations. And all of this, I think, links into developing a sense of identity, a new feeling about who you are. And I'm very keen that we see universities in a more holistic way than often we have done in the past. So in fact, the academic, which is what we're most interested in, cuts across both the personal and the social. And we'll look at this a little bit more in the next slide. So again, I took an idea from Pittsburgh University in the States, where they talk about the 8 dimensions of wellness. And I think what we appreciate more and more is that it's not just about the academic. Actually, students have to fit into a new social context, new physical context in many ways. That we need to look often to their emotional and spiritual needs. Also, finances are very problematic for some students. We need to think about their new occupations. We need to nurture the intellectual and also think about the new environment that they're in. And all these things will impact really, really strongly on students. When I talk to students in the UK, and of course this will be different whichever country you come from, but students weren't in the first few days really very interested in the academic. Before they came to university, a lot of their worries about what do I need to bring with me, what can I bring, what will fit into my room, what's there at the university, what can I afford to buy now, what will I be able to share with others, and lots of questions like, will I be able to keep my bike somewhere, how am I going to get there? And these are all the personal things, I think, that influence students, certainly in the UK, very, very strongly. The other kind of questions as they got into university, and I'll say there's definitely gender differences here, so I'm talking just for this slide from a female perspective, but is that social perspective? Again, the academic, of course they're going to university because they want to study and because they like their subject, but they're asking questions like, what should I wear when I go out? How short can my skirt be in the UK? Certainly that's an issue. How high can my heels be? Who will I go with? Who will I come home with? What can I talk about? One student said to me, why is everyone so weird? Why is it all so difficult? Why can't I make decisions? And of course there are many students who are excluded from this kind of area. So thinking about non-drinking events, multicultural activities, and celebrating difference. And I think it's a time, especially for young students, when there's a lot of pressure on them. And for the first time, perhaps, no one is setting the boundaries in the way that they've had previously. But again, this links back to identity. Who am I? Who do I want to be? And the questions for students in different parts of the world from different cultures and different backgrounds will obviously be different from the questions that I've put on this slide. But I think they will all be the kinds of questions. How do I fit into my new community? Even if you're a mature student studying online, how will I be able to work in that community? And so it's about the social very strongly as well as the academic in these early phases. And there's a lot of research about students going into higher education, and this concept of student connectedness and that often relates to the social as well as the academic, is more important than any faculty or staff-supported activity. And social adjustment is the single most important factor in transition. So I imagine in places across the world that these will be the same kinds of issues. Finding a place in a new social group is not always easy. Social anxiety is really, really common, especially for younger students. Maturity is developing, and that includes sensitivity to the needs of others that they've not needed to recognise previously. There's a lot of research to show, especially in the States, that loneliness is a major issue and can lead to depression and withdrawal. And those who have the most concerns about going to university are actually at the most risk. And I think that's a really important thing for us to recognise. And I think this is where a programme such as EpiGym can come in. This course about student success is actually able to pick up and support students through some of these really complex areas of adjustment to higher education, thinking about why they're there, what they want to do, and so on. And we'll be looking at that later. Again, a lot of very interesting research is that students are more likely to invest greater effort in their learning if they're involved as members of the university community. And so it's up to the community to find ways in which that can happen. Obviously, face-to-face relationships are the most important. But again, this course on student success can support students in thinking through some of the issues. There's a direct relationship between the quality and quantity of student involvement in campus activities and their academic performance and satisfaction. Again, the academic is linked into other lots of institutional activities. Positive interaction with peers brings about a sense of belonging, increased student satisfaction, and a sense of responsibility. And again, this course looks at some of those areas, group learning, peer support, and so on, that students may be engaging with. And I think the most important thing at all, which emerged from some research I did with a colleague, is that attitudes and behaviour patterns that students set during induction are difficult to reverse or change. So it's really important that we think very, very deeply about that transition process as students come into higher education. If we look at the notions of connectedness, again, this will depend hugely on the university. There's lots of pros and cons with what students can engage with. So residencies, there's a lot of research now that shows that this can have a real impact on community and even an impact on academic progress. But of course there are all kinds of issues. There's a shock of living with others, noise, chaotic kitchens in some cases, shared responsibilities. University societies are great, but a lot of students are very shy and concerned that they don't really know what they're interested in. Others will be better than themselves, they can't afford it. Sports teams bring about a sense of belonging, but of course a lot of students don't have that opportunity to engage in sport or don't like sport. Peer support systems that many, many institutions now have are great, but you still have students who think, is it only me who can't do this? Am I the only one who doesn't really understand what I'm meant to be doing? Group work in large classes is very common now, but again, cultural differences, different norms for assessment, no more individual assessment is very, very difficult for students. And attending seminars and tutorials is good because students have close contact, but again, some students are very scared of being in a small group, not understanding, not knowing things, thinking that others are much brighter than themselves. So all the issues and the worries that students have. Then on top of that, universities, I think, expect students just to engage with new ways of working. We talked to students before they came into schooling, and they don't understand what a lecture is. You might expect them to, but they don't know the purpose of it. Why is that different from a seminar or a tutorial? What are personal tutorials? Why are workshops different? lab sessions, field trips, skills sessions. Again, lists and lists of different vocabulary that you will have in your own institution, which students will not recognise. In the UK, we talk widely about formative assessment and summative assessment. Students may be told about this, they may have information about it online or in handbooks, but they really do not understand the differences. But we probably assume that they do. All kinds of tests and exams, essays, reports, assignments, portfolios, e-portfolios, presentations, all have different rules, different ways of assessing students, different kinds of feedback, and yet we just expect students to get on and understand all this. Again, in the UK, there's lots of different ways of dividing up the content of knowledge. We have modules, programs of courses, but often the vocabulary is different, and I'm sure that will be different across the world. We then think about group marks, individual marks, weighting of marks. Does your first year at university count? That's different according to your university. Degree classifications, differences in marking between subjects. And so, for example, a maths student may be getting 85%, whereas a humanities student does well to get something over 65%. The students compare each other and they don't understand these differences. So they're moving into a very, very complex world, which often we forget to engage with them and to draw them into that world. We simply expect them to get on with it. So again, there are many, many skills that we can support students with, and this course, EpiGM course, does exactly that. All kinds of study skills, research skills, skills for managing and using information, personal organisation skills, and helping students to respond flexibly to different contexts. Most universities do support students very well in these areas, but again, there are so many new areas that students have to engage with, and especially these days with the large amount of information and data that is available. One of the issues in relating to the large amount of information available is that it's too much. Technology allows us so much information. Technology for research is a fantastic thing. Students go quickly to Wikipedia, but often beyond that, and they find that they're overloaded with information. And so identification and selection of information is far harder than it used to be when you just took a few books out of the library. And referencing is a difficulty for students. Technology should be an aid to learning, but we've also found that it can set up barriers and be intimidating and actually in some cases impede learning until students are drawn into that world and understand how it can be used to their advantage. We also, I think, have a myth about the digital native, which is a term which is commonly used today in relation to technology. The assumption that young people can just get on with using technology. And to a large extent that's true. But actually using Google, Facebook, Twitter, apps, games, mobile phones, tablets and so on does not mean that students can see their relevance to learning. So again, students need to be drawn into that world and supported in how technology can be used to help them learn. An issue I found was about digital etiquette. I get an email one day from a very enthusiastic student. Yo, I want to meet 10 tomorrow. That's great, and I understood that message, and it was fine because it was me, but some academics don't appreciate being greeted in that kind of way. And even more importantly, the digital footprint. What do you really want people to know about you now and in the future? As a student, you may be very tempted to write in tweets or to post photographs of yourself but actually how much do young people think about what that's going to mean to them in the future. An international dimension, I think most universities now in large parts of the world will have an international dimension. I'm obviously talking about the kinds of students who come to the UK. And the kinds of issues which students have raised with me are really, really important that we understand as universities, and students are supported in understanding cultural differences. So spoken language can be really difficult. It's not like the textbook, and idioms in every language are particularly hard. Assumptions about learning can be very different. Individual rote learning may be the norm in some places, but actually in the UK this is much less prevalent these days. Assumptions about teachers can be very different. So we appreciate that deference towards the teacher is very, very important in some cultures. But actually in the UK we expect students to challenge and question and have their own opinions. And for a lot of students that's a new way of thinking. Simple things that we don't think about. Food is very different. So in the UK bread is everywhere, sandwiches everywhere. And one student asked me, to my surprise, is it okay to eat rice and chopsticks in public? They simply didn't know whether we would laugh at them or frown at them. Again, as I said, technology is very difficult. Opinions and a new way of thinking are really important. Learning that it's okay to ask questions in higher education. And then thinking about what it all really means. Why have you come into higher education? We may have thought once that education is what it's all about, that learning in its own right is what it's all about. But actually, many, many students now come into higher education because they want to get a job. And it's really, really early in their degree when they first come in, but they must start thinking about this. What's it worth? What does a degree tell employers? How important is subject knowledge beyond a degree? How important are skills? Which skills? What about attitudes and student attributes? And the main thing I think that is so important, no matter where you come from, if you want to move into the best jobs, do I stand out from the crowd? Do I look different from all the thousands and thousands of other students coming into university today? And it's too late to say at the end, what else should I have done? Students need to engage with everything that they can do throughout their degree, whatever opportunities are available to them. This is a skills map which I developed over the years of working with both students and employers. And we looked at some of the areas that students might like to develop themselves in. What's important is a lot of these areas, like taking responsibility for my own learning, presenting information and ideas effectively, being well informed about time commitments and responsibilities. Each area you look in, these are academic skills, things that students will need to do in order to get a good degree, in order to manage their time, manage themselves. But actually, many of those skills, however academic they are the professional skills that they will need for their futures. And so being able to articulate those academic skills and recognize that they are also skills for employability is a really important part of any student's degree. And again, in the EpiGM course, we look at the kinds of skills that can be developed and how this links to the world of employment. In many institutions now, in the UK, Australia probably particularly, New Zealand, parts of the States, students are expected to engage with their universities in new ways. So for example, at Exeter University, I've worked with students over many years to actually bring about change in their own institution, not to sit back and complain about things, but actually to support us as an institution in making that university better for them. And that may not happen everywhere, but I think the most important thing is to see learning as a partnership, and also that students must be allowed to be empowered and to be proactive, possibly only in their own learning, but also perhaps in the society and the community in which they're living. And it's really important to remember that students make their own experience, but some students will make this better than others because of their life experiences, because of their personalities. And I really believe that we need to support students in understanding what that's about. And again, some institutions will support them by actually allowing them to drive change, to emphasize students being engaged in creating the university community in which they want to live. They will be actively involved. And when I talked to my own children, which I appreciate is a very, very poor sample, I was actually interested by them. My older son said his abiding, outstanding memory of university is when you can't do something, it's really hard. And I thought, this in a way is really, really sad, because university should be about so much more than that. But we really should in institutions look for a way to support students better perhaps than we have done. And my daughter, much more to my own liking, said, well, university is just a load of buildings. It's what you make of it that really counts. And I think that's what we've got to engage students with. And again, this Epigeum course actually, I think, enables students to recognise so much of what they bring into higher education and what they can make of it and get them off to a really, really successful start. So thank you for listening, and we're now going to look at some of the Epigeum resources for this course.
And now we'll move on to the demonstration, so I'll hand over to Katie.
Thank you very much. Hello everyone. So I'm going to take you through some of the highlights of the programme and demo the key features. If you have any questions, feel free to submit them in the question panel during the demo. So this is the main screen which presents all the courses in the Academic Success programme. And here we have the welcome screen with different tabs showing information about the authors, the learning outcomes for the course structure, supporting institutions, and course highlights. So first I'm going to talk through some features from a typical screen before showing you some of the highlight features from across the programme. So here is a screen from very early on in course 1, which is called What is Higher Education For? This course is a settling in course designed to help students reflect on what they want from their university experience and on how it is different from what they have done before. So at the top of each screen, there is a screen challenge which is related to the topic covered on that screen. So it's usually a question for reflection. And this one asks the students to reflect on the practical steps they can take to help themselves settle into student life. On each screen, we indicate roughly how long it will take students to work through the text and the activities in this central part of the screen. It does not include the sidebar activities. Typically, the screens take between 3 to 10 minutes to complete, and all the screen timings have been student tested. So down the side of the screen, you will see boxes which we refer to as pods. I will show you some examples of these shortly, but these contain additional information or additional activities for the students to complete. And we also have the AS course characters who feature throughout the programme. As students work through each course, they can see how the characters deal with different issues. So I'm now going to demo a screen from each course so you can see the kinds of activities included and what the courses offer the students. So the first screen I'm going to show you is all about adapting to higher education and comes from course 1. Adapting is a key theme from this course. So this screen has a couple of activities on it. Most screens have 2 to 3 activities in the central panel. After some introductory text, we introduce our first activity. This is a click-through activity where students can learn about different learning settings that they may experience in higher education. After they've learned a little bit about different learning settings, we move on to this video, which includes short clips from students and staff talking about the differences between school and university level study. Videos are a key part of the AS course. We have over 30 videos across the programme which feature students and staff from the UK, Ireland, Australia and New Zealand. We conducted 80 interviews and have included students from a range of backgrounds, including international and mature students. I'll now play a short clip of this video.
I found a massive difference. I came in from a school maybe of 500 to 600 students, and then I come into a college with over 6,000 students. It's a massive jump.
I feel like it's different socially because in school it's very small and everyone kind of knows everyone, so that means that there's room for like cliques and kind of hierarchies. But at uni, no one knows you. You can kind of be whoever you want. You can be friends with whoever you want.
As you'll see too, there are transcripts available for each of the videos. The screen rounds off with some guidance about places where students can seek support to help them adjust, which is another key theme for this programme and is dealt with in all the 3 courses. In this sidebar, we have some pods which offer extra information and enable us to keep the main screens a nice manageable size. So the first one we have here is a student say or quote pod. These are real quotations obtained from real students that offer different perspectives on the topic. We also have here a portfolio activity pod. There are 29 of these across the whole programme and they provide additional exercises for students to do to build on what they've learned on the screens. Each one takes 5 to 15 minutes and in total there are 4 hours worth of activities. They are a valuable skills development tool that can also be used individually in the classroom or in peer-to-peer study sessions. We provide some supplementary materials that include ideas for using these tools in class. So the final pod we're going to look at on this screen is the useful advice pod. So this pod provides answers to commonly asked questions. In this case, why don't I just go to school 5 days a week like last year? We'll now move on to course 2. This is a foundation course in student skills. We cover both personal organisation skills like managing workload and motivation, as well as core study skills like writing and note-taking. This is why we call it student skills rather than study skills. So this screen covers academic writing and aims to introduce students to some core principles of good academic writing. And it teaches them about the importance of structuring their work appropriately and introduces the basics of how to mix description, evidence and argument. This was highlighted as an important topic by staff and students when we developed the programme. There are 3 activities on this screen. The first activity is a key concepts diagram. So students click on each term and learn about the principles of good academic writing. The second activity tests the students on their understanding of how to structure well-written work using drag and drop activity. On the left, we've included extracts from a piece of work, and on the right, we have included the names of different sections of the same piece of work. Students have to identify the correct extract from each section and drag it into the correct spot. So I'm just going to have a go at this now. So, putting these in different sections and check answers. So as you'll see, feedback is given at the end with ticks or crosses, and students have the opportunity to try again. And then to restart the activity. We then move on to look at the importance of balancing description, evidence and argument in students' writing. The third activity gives students the chance to rate someone else's work. The student is presented with 3 answers to the same short answer question. They have to indicate if they think the answer is satisfactory or not using the slider. So having read the paragraph, then select very good, satisfactory. I'm going to go with not satisfactory in this case. And then there is then feedback provided at the bottom of the activity, and it gives students reasons why their answer is good or not. At the end of this activity, there is also a printable summary, and this is a feature of quite a lot of our activities in the programme, so students can keep a file or log as they work through the course. Final feature I wanted to point out on this screen was the Your Context pod. So these are handy pods because they enable your institution to include customised text and links to your own resources and websites. So another activity I'd like to show you, again from course 2, is on the screen, Managing Your Workload. This activity requires students to answer a number of questions about their workload and what they know about the assessments and work sessions coming up for them during a term or semester. So, do you know how many pieces of work you'll need to submit for assessment this term or semester? Yes. And then there is some feedback. Do you know if you have any tests or exams? No. And then reasons why you need to find out this information. It's a great activity because the student has to apply the learning to their own situation and will likely come away with an action plan of things they need to find out. So now moving on to course 3. So this covers academic integrity. The screen I'd like to demonstrate looks at using sources. But first of all, one thing I'd like to stress about course 3 is that it really focuses on a positive message around academic integrity. So while we do cover plagiarism, it is not the main focus of the course. We lead with a module on integrity and a message that integrity is about more than just not plagiarising. Then we talk about positive ways to avoid plagiarism and finish by looking at some common pitfalls, again always emphasising the positive action students can take to be students who act with integrity. So this screen, using sources, provides students with tips and ideas for using sources in a careful way. It's also about buoying up their confidence so they can use sources without overusing them and be confident when using their own ideas too. In the first activity, the student clicks to reveal different tips for using sources, such as putting away the original text. We then move on to a scenario-based activity, where the student reads a comic strip featuring a couple of our academic success characters. One of the students is facing a dilemma, and the students taking the course can advise them on what to do next. So in this scenario, Priyanka has come up with what she thought was an original idea for a piece of work. The day after she completes it, she reads an article with the same idea in it. She is unsure whether she should cite the article in her work because she had the idea independently of reading the article. Should she pretend she didn't read it or cite the work, or does she have to come up with a brand new idea? So we see this comic strip playing out. And then there is a multiple choice question where the student can select one of the answers, providing advice for Priyanka, and then gets feedback. So if I then select, so what should Priyanka do, cite it, and then check answer. So there are a few other features that I'd just like to show you, which are part of each of the course. So if I'm just going to move on to the module summary screen. So each module ends with a module summary screen, which typically includes 1 or 2 activities. So this is a module summary screen from course 1. So this summary screen features an activity where students have to match up the learning experience with the main benefit. For example, what is the purpose and benefit of a lecture or of having learning goals? So if I select the learning experience attending a lecture, I look for the benefits, select this option, and there you see them matched. This is what happens if it's incorrect. So I'd also like to show you a practice scenario, and these feature at the end of each course. This is the practice scenario from course 1, and it comes in 2 parts. Part 1 is reflective. So students are asked to write 3 short pieces about their journey into higher education. So they're asked questions here and then can enter text and then view feedback. This piece of writing can be saved and printed by the student as an audit of their course journey. And then if we move on to part 2, students are asked to consider a range of skills that they may want to develop at university and prioritise them using the drag and drop tool. So the skills presented at the top, and then they can classify them like that. So moving on from the screen, one additional feature I'd like to show you are student polls. Polls like this one appear at several points in the programme and give students the chance to see what their peers think about a particular issue and compare it to their own view. So this poll asks the students why they chose to pursue higher education. We want them to reflect on their motivations and goals and realise there are different reasons for being in higher education. So once they've read the question, select an answer, click on vote, and it's possible to see how other students have answered this question. So that is the end of the demonstration of the Academic Success Programme. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katie. Now, if there are any other questions, we'll be able to address them now. First, there's a question that I've received regarding the development group of universities. This was from Amanda. Thank you for your question. How do you choose institutions for the development group? Well, we don't actually choose institutions to join the development group. What we tend to do is we pitch an idea. For example, in the case of this course, we pitched the idea of creating a course under Liz Dunne's directions to have a course to help students achieve their best at university. And then institutions that felt that there was a need for this at their institution would join in the project because they felt that there was a gap in what they were providing to their students. And so they would come and join the development group to be able to have input into the content of the course so that it meets their needs at their respective institutions. I hope that answers your question. Liz, I have a question for you. I understand this program is rather new. I'm curious whether the effect of participation will be studied and what the participation rate of first-year students is. I also would like to know how students evaluate the program. It looks really nice and useful.
I found the case study. Unfortunately, I don't actually work in the university on that program anymore, so I can't add in all the details, but I think the case study will show you a lot of detail about the impact. And we were working in the business school in particular. It was a pilot which we then rolled out, and working with very, very large cohorts of students, over 500 first years, growing to about 1,000 first years over a 3-year period. So yeah, I think the impact, we can show evidence of that long term, but I don't, I'm afraid, have access to that data.
Thanks, Liz. I have a question from James. where he asks, is there an indicator bar to show which modules you have completed, not started? As course administrator, if that it will be what you will do with this course, as course administrator you are able to track progress of each student to see what courses they've completed, what modules are left over, how they did on the course quiz. This is all information you'll be able to access as course administrator for this program. Amanda's asking, do you offer information to academics about how to use the program with their students? We offer supplementary material to the course administrator and the academics within the institution so that they're most effectively able to use it within their universities. We also have, as I mentioned earlier, we have a dedicated implementation team who travel all over the world visiting different institutions. They'll be able to give you the support you require in implementing the courses at your institution. So they can help you develop a blended learning program if that is what you're looking for, or help you advertise the program effectively to students. Okay, Liz, I have a question for you. Somebody has written, I'm still not convinced that the courses will suit my students. They are so different to England, so are you sure this will be helpful?
Yeah, that is a really, really good question, but I think as Sarah has showed to some extent, we are really trying to engage with all kinds of students. And really importantly, as I said at the beginning, we have engaged with people from many, many different backgrounds, teaching many students in different places in the world. And they have supported the development of this course. So hopefully we will capture most contexts. It's probably impossible to predict all the different contexts that people will be coming from, but I really do believe that many of the issues are very similar in different parts of the world. And again, the way that you can use this course is very flexible. You can get support in embedding it into your own context and putting your own information into it. So I think it should be suitable for all students. I really hope and believe that.
Thanks, Liz. Just one more comment for you. I don't understand what you mean about empowerment. I think we have to teach students their subject. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. You come to university in order to engage with your subject, and many, many students will have a great interest and a passion for their subject. But I think empowerment links both to their role in the university or in society at large, but also empowerment in relation to their learning. If they feel that all they're doing is perhaps rote learning and then regurgitating information for exams, that can be very difficult, and it doesn't enable you to feel that you're in charge of your learning. And I think really effective learning is when you can be more autonomous and take responsibility for it and understand the processes of learning and how you can learn best. And I also think that empowerment means that you will go out of the university more able and better equipped to cope with employment in the future.
Great. Thank you very much, Liz. I don't think we have any more questions at this point, so I'd like to show my final slide. These are some contact details and also a link to our website where you can gain access to a free course trial. You can also get in touch with us at marketing@epigeum.com. And if you want to have a trial of the course, you can get a feel for the program and see how they look and function. We can arrange that for you. I hope this morning's webinar was informative and of interest to you. If you have any questions, please do email us at marketing@epigeum.com. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.